Okay, great. So I think we'll get started. So my name's Natalia, and I'm a member of the Fostering Connections team. We will be doing these monthly, so feel free to throw any questions into the chat. We will be answering those as best as we can. And we'll also save the recordings for later viewing. And this 101 information type session is for the Victorian foster care system. So if you have questions that relate to systems interstate, we'll try to point you in the right direction for that, but this one is particularly for the Victorian system. And there may be differences between other systems. So before we get started, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which we're all tuning in today. I pay my respects to elders past, present, and emerging. Sovereignty was never ceded, always was, and always will be Aboriginal land. Thank you. All right, so a quick thing about what Fostering Connections is. So we're the statewide recruitment service for Victoria. So we're run through the Center of Excellence in Child and Family Welfare. And also supported by DHS. We provide support and information to prospective foster carers who are curious about, whether fostering is the right step for them, what are the next steps for them to take, and as well as informing the community about foster care and the role that wonderful foster carers do. So anyone can visit our website, it's fosteringconnections.com.au, or you can give us a call at 1-800-013-088. You'll most likely be chatting with myself, and we can have a chat about your specific circumstance and anything that you need in that space. I also want to shout out that it is going to be Care Day, and that is coming up on Friday. And we just want to highlight that all children and young people in care deserve a supportive and thriving opportunity to be cared for and looked after, and to rambling a little bit there, but a future of opportunity, equality, and equity. So that's what we want to support foster carers and highlight some of the great work that they do. A little bit about myself. So I've worked in out-of-home care and foster care for a little bit over 8 years. I've worked with children and young people, birth families, foster carers. So we're able to really go into depth for a lot of questions that you ask. So feel free, if there's anything specific you guys are curious about, we'll be able to answer that. And so far, I don't see any questions in the chat. So what is foster care? So foster care is the temporary care of children and young people by members of the community who have been approved and accredited to be trained foster carers. And often these children are unable to live at home. There's often been child protection involvement, and the arrangement is ideally to be temporary. So as a foster carer, your goal is to support that child in either returning to their birth family or ideally residing with a member of their extended family or within their community, so that they can have that opportunity to thrive and be supported in that space. However, there are occasions where children in care do stay in long-term care and need that ongoing support. So that is something that also occurs in foster care. Within Victoria, we have over 11,000 children in the out-of-home care system. About 1,500 or more are in foster care themselves, and these numbers have been rising following the aftermath of COVID-19. So that's why we're constantly putting out recruitment campaigns and ensuring that people know about foster care while the need is so great and continues to be so great. So during COVID and during lockdowns and restrictions, as a lot of us have experienced here in Victoria, recruitment has still continued. It has not stopped for children and young people to have that support, and foster carers are still greatly needed. So that is definitely not hindered by any lockdowns and things like that. Children in foster care are ages 0 to 18. So as a carer, you identify as you're going through the process. You don't need to know this early on what sort of care you want to provide and what sort of ages you think you want to care for. And the agency is with you on that journey to help identify what's the best fit for you. So some carers say that they really want to, they see their strength in supporting teenagers as they develop those skills to be independent and to move on towards adulthood and things like that. So carers are really passionate about that. Some carers find their strengths in supporting younger children. Other carers identify that they want to care for siblings and ensure that siblings stay together. So there's a lot of different streams that you can go into with foster care. And as your role as a carer is to ensure that you're providing those children with safety, consistency, boundaries, and routine to ensure that they can thrive in their day-to-day life while, things are happening in the background, whether it's identifying if they're staying in care, if they're returning to family, but your space is to support them with whatever comes up and to work together with the agency to ensure that their needs are met. So we've got our first question. Are you able to explain the reason why foster care agencies have changed their recruitment structure, i.e. are they still recruiting carers themselves or has this changed to another process? Agencies are still recruiting carers themselves. So if you have a chat with us, we then direct you to the agency that's within your area. Sometimes it can be a little bit confusing because there's a few agencies out there and they might not cover your area. So you might inquire with one and then get a bounce back and be informed that you need to have a chat with us and that will direct you further. Sometimes it's just about identifying what is the right fit for you. So you can go onto our website and see the list of the agencies that cover your area and find out a little bit more about them. And then if you do have a chat with us and get referred through our system, we then link you in with the agency. So we have a chat, refer you on to them. You'll get a call or an email from them within about 2 days. They'll have a chat with you again. They'll invite you to an information session if you feel that you want to go ahead. And then you move onwards and can register for training and things like that. So does that, oh, yep. So we've got another response to that question in the chat. So hopefully that answered your question, Timmy. In terms of who can become a foster carer, so anyone in the community can put their hand up and explore if it's the right option for them. What we're looking for is individuals that are committed and willing to open their home and to support children in having a positive experience. So you could be single, you could be partnered, you could be in a share house. It doesn't matter whether you're working full time or not working at all. What we do recommend is that you have a spare bedroom, and that you have that commitment in wanting to, learn and grow and support a child. So we really do need foster carers from all different backgrounds and all life stages. Children benefit from having those supportive adult mentors and positive examples. And so many people can share that with a child, regardless of whether you've had children of your own or whether you haven't. You still can be a really positive role model in a child's life. And that also goes to show for depending on the type of care you provide. So you can make a really significant impact in a child's life if it's short term, if it's just an emergency placement, and so forth. So I'll go into a little bit more detail about that. And I'll also be highlighting a lot of the support that foster carers get from their agencies this info session as well, just so that we can let you guys know that. We've got another question here, so I'll just have a quick look at that. If you're accredited for existing foster care and start a new relationship, does your partner need to do the training as well? So in that case, it's best to have a chat with your agency. If you were going through the assessment and you weren't in a relationship at the time, your agency also would have already explored this with you about what to do in the case that you did meet someone and you wanted them to be involved in your fostering, or if they were to move into the home. If they are going to be involved in the child's life, especially if they're going to provide a caring role, they will need all their checks completed, which include like a working with children's check, a police check, and the agency does all that. So that doesn't have a cost to you. And it is recommended that they do the training as well if they're going to be a part of your support network. So the agency will be able to talk to you about that. They can support you in planning on how to best introduce them, depending on the child's needs, if you want that sort of support. So they really are there with you to make sure that everything can go as smoothly as it can. We've got another question. So what's the average time children are in placements? Can you nominate timeframes, ages? Are the families of the children always involved in the foster journey? So that is the beauty of foster care. So it is very flexible. Early on, you might be starting this process thinking, I want to do one thing. You might do the training, go through the few months of the recruitment stage, and then think, actually, no, I think I'd also want to try this. So when you reach that final step of accreditation, once you've done the training, done the assessment, and had those conversations with the agency, you get an accreditation. And that accreditation stipulates what ages of children you care for, how many children you care for, how long you can care for them, and what sort of support you would need. And that isn't necessarily set in stone. So we've had carers who, I've worked with carers who, started off doing one sort of care. So maybe one type of care, perhaps it was respite and emergency. Maybe it was short term. And then after a while of doing it, they're like, actually, you know what? I really want to do a long-term placement, fall in love with this kid. I know this is something that they may require. So how can we look at changing my accreditation so that I can offer that support to this child or young person? So it's all about having consistent and transparent conversations with the agency. And they will also be approaching you to discuss what you're happy with, what hasn't worked, what has worked, what you want your care experience to look like, because foster carers need to be as equally supported as the children, because you guys are doing the groundwork and they're on the front lines with the kids and you know them so well. So we need to make sure that we're looking after you as well. In terms of birth families, yes, so we do encourage foster carers to have engagement with the birth families. That will always be under the advice of child protection and your agency. So wherever possible and wherever it's a positive engagement, we will have foster carers and birth family meet. Children will have contact with their birth parents. So as a carer, it's really important to support the child in having the most positive experience that they can. Whether that's, just before Mother's Day, having them do a project that they can bring to their contact to give their mom a card, or getting a gift so that they can bring it and have a positive contact with them. I've worked with carers who would gather and collect all the drawings from childcare that the little girl was doing, and every contact we would show up with this big bag of all these projects that the little girl had done, and it just warmed her parents' hearts so much to be able to see that they weren't missing out on all the aspects of caring for their little girl. So there are really beautiful ways that you can support birth family contact. That's either engaging with the parents or not, and the agency is there to direct you on how to best do that. So you always do that in consultation with them. Hopefully that answers your question, Rachel. We've got a question from Libby. So how is training being run during COVID? So it is a developing space. Prior to the lockdown that we just entered and now are exiting, a lot of agencies were exploring reintroducing face-to-face training. This could be up in the air at the moment, depending on what the restrictions and recommendations are in terms of capacity and supporting people in a COVID safe way. So when we were in the longer lockdowns last year, a lot of the training moved online. So pre-COVID, training was either done over a couple of weeks in the evening. Some agencies did it over 2 consecutive Saturdays, and were able to finish out, within those 16 hours total, I believe. And then during COVID, we started switching to doing it online, usually via Zoom. Or Teams or some sort of online platform, and doing the group work there with the agency and having all those sessions continue. So the training content didn't change. The length of time did, just because you can't sit in front of a computer for 8 hours straight ideally. But your agency that you get referred to will be able to explain that best to you in terms of how they're running it, how frequently, and how long it can take. But they're always following the risk recommendations from DFFH and COVID safe measures. So Libby, you can inquire with us, so you can have a chat with us and we'll refer you to an agency, or you can also go through our website, fosteringconnections.com.au, and then you'll be able to see all the agencies in your area, choose one that you want to go with, and then they can contact you directly if you're ready to take that next step, and they'll be able to tell you exactly what their processes look like. So hopefully that answers your questions. Any other questions before we continue on? In terms of the recruitment process, so I'll kind of outline that at the moment. So you can either call us, like I mentioned, and have a chat, and we'll refer you on. It's quite a simple way to do it, and we ensure that it is as smooth as possible for you. So you don't have to do anything after that. They will contact you, have that chat, invite you to their next information session, which pending COVID could be online, could be face-to-face, might be, one-to-one. So a lot of things are very flexible now. And you can have a chat with them about what that'll look like. Once you've done that information session and you feel ready to take the next step, you then register for training. So training is standard across the state, so regardless of which agency you go with, and same with this process. So the steps to become a carer are consistent across the state of Victoria. So you'll have to do, information session, training, assessment, and so forth to become a carer. So once you've registered for that training, you'll cover all the foundational knowledge of out-of-home care and foster care, what your role as a carer looks like, the needs that children in care come with, some of their backgrounds, how to support their culture, their identity, how to support their engagement with family, how to support any trauma behaviors that they may present with. So it is a really great foundational training, and it leaves you with a lot of practical tips and ways to manage your journey as a foster care moving forward. So we get a lot of good feedback about what that training offers. And that's not to say that once you do the training, your learning stops there. So you continue learning and developing your skills as a carer as you continue on. So once you become accredited, you also have opportunities to continue doing training or any learning that you're especially interested in. So for example, carers who express that they really want to support children with disability, or maybe carers that want to, get a little bit more online safety savvy. There's a lot of different training options that can be sent through to you to help you upskill and constantly be providing the best care that you can. So once you've completed that training, your agency will have a conversation with you about whether you want to go ahead. They'll then invite you to participate in an assessment, and the assessment is having one-to-one visits with them to discuss what is fostering going to look like for you. What sort of care do you want to provide? What are your strengths? Where would you need support? Is your household environment appropriate for a child? So they will also be meeting with all your household members. So if you have children in the home, they'll have a chat with them to see what their understanding is of care, and what that can impact their life. And it's a very transparent process. So your agency will be having conversations with you throughout about what they think that they want to recommend for you. If they have any concerns or any issues, they bring that up straight away. So it's all transparent and honest, and we want you to feel supported and that you can express yourself about any thoughts or concerns that you have during that process as well. Let's see if there's any more questions. Not yet. And at the moment, that process is taking around 6 to 9 months. Pre-COVID, it was a little bit shorter, but it is just something that you can try to get in as quick as you can. You can try to register for the training if you know that you really want to go ahead. There is paperwork included in the recruitment process, so trying to get your medical checks completed or giving all the information you need to get a police check done. Those are little things you can do to speed it up. But on average, what we're seeing is about 6 to 9 months with the space that we're in following COVID and during COVID lockdowns. Does anyone have any questions about the recruitment process and what that looks like? Anything that they're more curious about before we continue on? No, that's okay. So in terms of how long placements last, some placements like emergency placements might be a night, they might be a couple of nights. They're always agreed at the start of placement, and it's always explored what you can offer. So emergency placements tend to be more last minute. You might get a call in the afternoon saying, Johnny has nowhere to stay tonight. We've looked at his referral. He looks like he'd be a really good match for your home. Here's all the information for you to look through. Do you think you could support him, and how long could you support him for? There's also respite. So respite can occur, it's usually planned, and it can occur on weekends. So some foster carers choose to do respite for the same child. So they'll have the same child come and stay with them on school holidays or on weekends that they're available. Or some carers have a very busy they have a very busy schedule. So they're like, look, it doesn't need to be the same child. I just want to be able to support. I'm available this weekend a month or these 2 weekends a month. So please contact me if you have anyone that you think would be a good match. So you can definitely provide a lot of support in quite flexible ways. Short-term placements can go anywhere from a couple of weeks to a couple of months. And then long-term placement is for children that have been identified that they cannot return to family and that the best option would be for them to have permanency within their placement. And so long-term placements go until the age of 18. As a long-term care, you continue having support from the agency. You're still a part of that team and working with them to ensure that the child can thrive and they stay living with you during that period. And you support them, with independent living and moving forward. So in terms of the support that agencies provide, because we are putting a little bit of a focus on that this month, and you'll be able to see us share a blog post within the next week or so on this. So foster care agencies are very dedicated and committed to ensuring that children have the best support and opportunities while they're in care. And a huge part of that is obviously making sure that the carers are looking after themselves, practicing self-care, feeling supported, continuing to do training and having a positive experience as much as they can and as supported as they can be. So that looks like having after-hours support. If there was anything that happened out of business hours, every agency will have an after-hours or on-call line. So if there was an emergency or something that you needed to seek advice on, you'd have that. There's the ongoing training, which is either through the agency or through external bodies that they can link you in with. There is a peak advocacy body for foster carers, which is the Foster Care Association of Victoria. So that's FCAV. And every registered foster carer can sign up with them and receive support from them. Currently, they've got some really wonderful initiatives going on, like counseling and things like a short-term counseling for carers that need support during COVID. So they've got some really great things available there. And then your standard, what your agency will offer you is making sure that you're okay. So during the days and during the weeks, they'll be linking in with you, seeing how it's going. You get to have at minimum one session a month with your agency worker. And that is your time and your space to talk about, okay, what's going on? What are the wins that we really need to celebrate? What are things that we could have improved or what really grinded my gears this month? And how can we make that improve in the future? So your agency and your worker are there with you on the journey. And, they're going to hear about the school wins that happen and the school awards that happen because you'll share those experiences with them. They're going to hear about the times it's taken you, a little bit longer to leave the house in the morning because of, the child getting late out of bed. So they're with you on that journey and they're a massive support for you. So they really do ensure that you're looked after and that you're taking care of yourself. And you've developed a really supportive relationship with them that you can say, actually, thank you for offering this placement, but I need some time to myself this weekend. So you never have to take a placement. You're always asked and given all the information available. And you have that relationship with the agency to be able to say whether it's the right time for you or not. And that is really strongly encouraged as well. A lot of foster carers, have a really giving heart, but you're not going to provide the best care that you can if you're not doing very well and if you're not at your best. So ensuring that you practice self-care and access your support networks as well is really critical in that. We've got another question. So are the children always placed locally or could they end up about 100 kilometers away? So the way that it works in Victoria is that it's based on regions. So all the different agencies within your region that you're accredited with and the agency that you're with will receive the same referrals. And if they're from within that region, then all the agencies can have a look at it. They then look at their foster carers that are available and they try to do that matching. So the matching is the most critical part in the placement process. And that is why it's really important that when you're doing the assessment and as you become a carer, you're identifying what you want to do and where your strengths are and what sort of support you can need so that then these placements can be matched as positively and as ideally as possible, because then that means the child is having a better experience. So, if you weren't in great headspace or if there wasn't the best match and then that placement broke down or didn't go ahead very well, then that child's had a negative experience in care that could have been prevented. So placement matching is really critical. So in that case, what can happen is, like, let's say a sibling group has come up, but one of them is a baby. And we have a couple of carers who put their hand up to offer a placement to them. Then those referrals get forwarded on to, or those placement options get sent on to child protection, and discussions are had about what is the best match for that child. So one carer perhaps would need childcare and the other wouldn't. One perhaps is very far from school and it's a little bit closer. So the decision will be made on a case-by-case basis to ensure that the best placement is found for that child, so that it is positive for them. So some instances, children do have to travel a little bit longer to school. Some instances, a few placements are offered, and the one that will provide the most stability will be chosen. Like, for example, for children under 2 or for babies, they will prefer a placement ideally that doesn't require them to have to go into childcare. But it is very case by case. So just identifying what you need as a carer, what supports you would need, will then allow us to have the best matches available for you. So hopefully that answered your question. Do we have any other questions at this stage? And that might bring us into some of the myths of fostering. So, the idea that you can't foster care if you're working full time. So that's definitely not true. A lot of foster carers are working. They could be working full time. They could be working part time. Some carers aren't working at all, and they're a full stay at home carer. It really depends, and that's where that matching that I discussed earlier comes up, to make sure that we're making it work for you so that it works for the child. If your circumstances change as well, that can be flexible with you as you go. So we've had carers who provided short-term or placements for a couple of years, and then their employment situation changes and their availability is a little bit less available. So then they switch back to providing respite care. So it really is flexible, and it changes with you as your needs change. You also don't need to be in a relationship to care. So a lot of single individuals can become carers. And it's just about looking at what your lifestyle looks like to make sure that the placement can go as smoothly, and that matching kicks in as well. You don't have to own your own home. A lot of foster carers rent their home. Some agencies will have you, if you're supporting siblings, they can share a bedroom. So that's something to discuss what that looks like. But the recommendation is to have a spare bedroom, and a bedroom that can be a neutral space for that child. So it's not a room that you have someone living in that room, and then when the child comes to stay, you're moving them out of it. That wouldn't be appropriate, and that wouldn't be ideal. So ideally, it would be a space that they can have that is neutral to them, and they can make it a safe environment for them to feel secure in. And the agency can talk to you about that. You're also not expected to have your home set up for that child prior to being accredited and approved. So, the agency will work with you about what your home environment is like, and whether it's appropriate for a child. And then after being approved, you can then explore what you need to put into place to have children come and stay with you. So it's always about waiting until after you've been approved before doing that. So there's a lot of myths around caring and having children of your own in the home. So you definitely can have your own biological children in the home. It's about having children in care experience a positive environment, and families can look in all shapes and forms these days. So ensuring that you can keep everyone in the household engaged and heard and consistent and supported will ensure a positive outcome for them. So ensuring that your own children's needs are met and they know who to talk to if they have any worries and concerns, which is why agencies have a chat with them during the recruitment process as well to see what their understanding is. Children in foster care and children, your own biological children, can build really beautiful relationships. So during your care training, you are supported in how to manage anything that can come up, and identify anything that comes up between your own child and a child that's in placement with you. And if you ever have any concerns, you can talk to your agency about that as well. But there's some really beautiful stories of children growing some great bonds with other children that have been in the home. Same thing with pets. You can definitely still have your own pets and things like that. So it's just about having a conversation with the agency. Is there space in your home that if a child was afraid of a dog, or if they needed time to adjust to the dog, that it could be removed from where the child is, and they can have that space to be reintroduced to them. So just having an adequate space for your animals to also be in the home and adequate supervision. There's a lot of myths and confusion around fostering and adoption. So fostering is not the same as adoption. When you adopt a child, you become the permanent legal parent of that child or young person. And as a foster care, you are the care of that child for a fixed period with that common goal of reuniting them to their birth family whenever that is possible. So the child's guardian, when they're in out-of-home care or in foster care, is defined through their court orders, and it's often with the department or partially with the birth family. So you get all that information on the child's circumstance and their court orders when you receive information about the child. Any other questions before we move on? In terms of the information that you get about a child before they are placed with you, so the agency will give you everything that they can. You can always ask for information as well before accepting or once you've accepted. Usually children will come with a referral, and it'll have the information about their placement history, about their age, where they've gone to school, their circumstances that have led them into care, their routines, ideally, any medical needs. So all that information ideally is there. There are instances where referrals don't have a lot of information. As you can imagine, if a child's been removed at short notice, we're still gathering that information. Child protection is still in process of acquiring that. And sometimes you as the care are the eyes and ears on the ground to identify, this is their favorite food. And, when we had a bedtime routine, this worked really well. So a lot of times you can update the agency about that and help pass that information on. So even if they're only with you for a short period of time, if you had a really successful routine with them, you can pass that on to the agency, and then the next carer can know that this worked really well. Sometimes carers will be like, okay, they're coming, they're going to be here in a few hours. Can we find out what their favorite food is so that they can have that comfort when they get home today? Do they need a nightlight in their room? What sort of, just little things that can help a child feel more comfortable. You'll get all the information as well around family contact and when that's occurring and how that'll fit into your schedule. So the agency will tell you all about that, helping them to go to school and things like that. So you get all that information, and you can always ask for more as well. You'll also be expected to and able to support their culture and their identity needs. So if that's not in the referral, you can also get more information about that and assist the child in feeling safe and secure in that way too. What else can we share with you guys? We always get a frequent question around if you can be a foster care if you're not a citizen or permanent resident. So foster carers who come into this role that perhaps are on a business visa, this doesn't apply for New Zealand citizens, but perhaps you're on a temporary visa in Australia. So in that case, you could look at getting accredited, but your accreditation would look a little bit different. So you wouldn't be doing long-term care. You'd probably be doing emergency respite and short-term, just because your visa requirements can't guarantee that you'll be in the country for a long-term space. So you can definitely still be a carer if you're on a temporary visa, but the types of care you can provide might be a little bit limited in that space. Any other questions? It also is recommended that anyone in your household, if they're over 18, attends the training with you. The agency will be able to discuss this with you more, but it allows you to have your support network and people who will be exposed to the child to know what to expect, know how to support them, have a better understanding of it, which can just ease the whole process and make it go more smoothly and be more positive for everyone involved. So that is really recommended. We've also had foster carers come through training prospective carers come through training with their adolescent or teenage children, so that they could be really informed about that. So it's just about having a chat with the agency to identify what would be appropriate for your own children to attend and participate in. But a lot of the times when a biological child has, and it's been and they've been, a teenager or an adolescent, they found it really beneficial, not only for their own learnings, but in how they can be a part of that space. So in that case, your children do have to be involved in the recruitment process. So even if they're a little bit younger, if they're school aged, they will have a chat with the worker. If they are, under 2, they will be observed in the home during that assessment process, just to see how they're interacting and how they feel about it and what they understand and who they can talk to. That's their safe person. So they definitely are included in the recruitment process. In terms of your support network, so you are, the agency will have a chat with you about your support network during the assessment process, and what that looks like for you and what sort of support you would need. So if you have a natural support network, if you have a family member or a really close friend who you want to support you in that space, they can also do the training. They would also get the checks done if they're going to have any sort of parenting role for that child. So that can definitely be explored. And I might see if there's any more questions before we start wrapping up. All right. So does anyone have any final questions before we start winding down the Foster Care 101 session? Great. Well, look, we're very, very glad that you've joined us today. We've had some really great questions. So it sounds like a lot of you have done your research as well, which is really great to see. So if you're interested in learning a little bit more, if you're ready to take the next step, you can give us a call. It's 1-800-013-088, or you can submit an inquiry directly on our website. So you will then see when you put in your postcode which agencies are in your region, and you can identify and pick which one you would like to go ahead with. They'll then give you a call and you can start this journey. That is so exciting. So wishing you the best of luck. How long is the training? So the training at the moment, like previously it was about 16 hours total. That was when it was face-to-face. When it's online, they've broken it down into smaller chunks. So you might do like a 2-3 hour chunk, and then maybe the next week or a few days later, they have it scheduled if it is online. So the agency will be able to discuss what that looks like with you and when all their trainings are held. There is no cost to you to do the training, so you just need to engage with your time and with an open mind and open heart to start learning about what the next steps are. So hopefully that answered your question. But yeah, great. Give us a call. Feel free to have a chat with us. And it's a really big step, but it's a way that you can really make a difference and make an impact in a child's life. So and it is so flexible. So that's a really important thing, I think, to take out of it. You're never alone in it. You're always very supported, and it is very flexible. So thank you. I hope everyone's making the most of their last day in our circuit breaker lockdown, that everyone's staying safe and looking after themselves and their loved ones. And we will see you next time or have a chat with you in the future. Thank you. Bye.